Hello and welcome to Tales from the Paper Darkness, Gothic short stories and poems by Derwin Seraphine. Tonight's episode, Picture Puzzle. The Picture Puzzle. I hadn't been sleeping very well over the last couple of weeks. Not well at all, but I didn't want to show it. Not at all. How would I have explained it to anyone else? If I managed to get them to listen, they would have thought me crazy. Of course they would. Even I had become convinced that I was losing my mind. It started small at first, so I didn't notice it for some time. He had been away for a week on his trip, not long at all. I wasn't used to being in the house on my own. The jigsaw puzzle we had started together had been left exactly as it should, the whole thing waiting patiently for his return. At least, that was what I had thought. As I said, it had taken some time for me to notice. Shoved away in the corner, I barely glanced down at the puzzle on the few times I walked past. Not at first. But then it escalated. One morning, as I moved to open the curtains, my eyes happened to fall on the bottom right corner, a piece that I was sure we hadn't found yet. But there it was, complete and 2 rows thick. It didn't resemble the picture I remembered from the box. Not at all. Moving the box of spare pieces aside for a moment, I examined the rest of the puzzle. I followed the ring of the edge with my eyes, the sepia tone sinking into my consciousness slowly, as I glanced back at the bright flashes of colour in the box as they had been before. Awkwardly I lifted the cardboard above my head so that I could see the design we had been aiming for when we started the puzzle. Maybe I had been mistaken in my memory. Perhaps I had grabbed the wrong box. But the brightly coloured, almost psychedelic curves of the stained glass pattern, picked out in metallic gold, stared back at me mockingly. That night was the first of many. The first night that I awoke with my heart racing, and panic shocking my senses. Every creak and tap sounded as loud as a gunshot in the dark. But I was alone, and nothing moved. When I finally got out of bed hours later, I was exhausted. I hadn't been able to get back to sleep, and I knew that I was in for a terrible day. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found when I walked into the living room that morning. As I moved towards the window, I couldn't help glancing down at the jigsaw once again. I hoped that I had imagined the incident from the day before. But I was wrong. Another row had been completed now, the sepia tones mocking me silently from the bright green felt of the card table. For 3 weeks I awoke to the empty darkness, hypersensitive and afraid. At 3 a.m. exactly, I would wake, unable to get back to sleep. For hours I would lie there. When I finally pulled myself away from the mattress and made my way downstairs, I would see the sight that I was dreading. Piece by piece, row by row, the picture grew from the outside in, row after row of some sepia-toned photograph that I did not recognize. It didn't matter what I did, whether I pulled the pieces apart, threw them away, scattered them in the wind. No matter what I did, I would wake in the night to the empty darkness, and every morning the jigsaw would greet me, edging slowly closer and closer to completion. When I woke on that last night, the last night that I was going to be alone, I assumed that it would be exactly the same as always. That night when I woke, at 3 precisely, something felt different. As I lay trying to get my breathing back under control, I knew for a fact that I was being watched. The floor creaked over by my window, an impossibly quiet sound that echoed into my brain like a blast from a gong. Panic shot through me as I tried to reconcile the shadows around me with my own comfortable room. The window was a pale outline through the thick blackout curtains. The mirror and the dressing table I slowly distinguished across from me, their familiar shapes soothing me slightly until the other silhouette came into focus beside it. The figure of a man took a small indistinguishable step to the right as the creaking floorboards shouted out his presence once again. I gasped, unable to move. The blood pounded through my veins like liquid fire, my skin burning up as he moved again. The slight step took him towards me gradually, and infinitesimally small as his steps were, I knew that he was moving closer to me, almost up against the foot of the bed now. There was a bright and blinding flash of light, and in my panic I couldn't tell what it was. The sharp smell of old-fashioned flash paper hit my nostrils as I felt the pressure on the end of the bed. A second flare showed me where he was. The figure was now standing above me, the mattresses dripping where his feet met the sheets, his legs pressed up against the wooden frame at the end of the bed. The face looked down at me from behind the camera, grinned a wide toothy smirk as I screamed. He pressed the button once again. The last puzzle piece clicked into place. My heart beat its terminal beat as the full image was finally revealed. The picture of my ultimate fate and last terror. That was The Picture Puzzle, which can be found in Tales from Behind the Wallpaper, available on Amazon as Kindle or paperback. Thank you for listening.